long time no see. Welcome to my studio. I'm Sarah, and first off, I want to thank you all so much for 200 subscribers. Your support means so much to me, especially if you stuck around during my unintended break. On another note, I got a new computer a few months ago, so I upgraded my art program to Clip Studio Paint. I still have a lot I want to do for traditional art, but I am so excited for this opportunity to experiment with digital art, and I have done quite a lot of digital art recently. Opening Clip Studio Paint for the first time, there are so many buttons. Before watching any tutorials, I explored the program on my own off-camera, trying to find and organize all the settings and windows I thought I'd want to use. I'm used to the very simplistic Autodesk sketchbook layout, so compared to CSP, there is a lot more in Clip Studio, which I am really excited to finally have access to features I haven't before, like gradient maps, more layer mode, such a wide array of brushes. I'm using Love to Draw Manga's watercolor brush right now, and a proper liquify tool, which I was very excited about. And the built-in time-lapse feature is useful for videos too. The first thing I drew was this rough sketch of my new Zelda OC Farron to try and get used to the program, before jumping into a giant illustration of her. It's very easy to be overwhelmed by the myriads of brushes available in the asset library. I tried to find a few that looked interesting, but there are only so many brushes you realistically use in a piece, and fancy brushes aren't going to automatically make the art better, so I looked for texture brushes that mimic traditional supplies, and I found this Artemis pencil set I love. My goal is for my traditional and digital art processes to be somewhat similar, so I can more easily switch between the two and my art can be more consistent. At least that's the idea. The process for this piece doesn't really line up with that though. I will say doing so much digital art recently has definitely spoiled me when it comes to being able to easily adjust sketches. You can't just select and resize things traditionally. You have to erase and redraw it. Now, a little bit about my character and this piece. As I mentioned before, this is my Zelda OC Farron. Her name means adventurous, and she's named after Furore and Faron. She fits specifically into Twilight Princess, and she is Shad's younger sister. There are some elements in her design inspired by him, like the little hair bit on her forehead, and some of the color scheme, like the purple on her corset. They are very different in personality, though. While Shad loves books and isn't much of a fighter, Farron is the opposite. She was never one to be able to sit still for a book and is a fighter with a very adventurous spirit. Her main weapon is a crossbow. A little OC headcanon of mine is that she later gives Link one, which is my explanation for Link's crossbow training. Trying to figure out the symmetry tool gave me a little trouble, but it was very helpful to draw the lantern once I figured it out. It would have looked a lot wonkier if I hadn't. Ever since doing that clothing study, I've actually really enjoyed drawing clothing folds. I may have gone a bit overboard with how many folds there would be on this kind of material, but I didn't really think through that. It'd be cool to make a fabric swatch thing for my characters, and that would probably help with drawing their clothing more accurately. Farron also has a messenger/attack hawk. I loved that gimmick in Twilight Princess. I struggled a bit with drawing the hawk, but I love drawing birds, so it was a lot of fun once I figured it out. Something I love about Clip Studio Paint is the pen pressure and tilt sensitivity. Traditionally, I've been experimenting with drawing with my pencil at different angles to add more variation, so being able to continue that digitally was a nice surprise. I tried some of the different pencil brushes because I wanted something with a bit more texture to it for my line art, and I ended up picking the textured pen found under the pen tab, which has worked well for me so far. While I didn't do much, I don't really know what I did to some of the settings for these brushes. I just kind of messed around until it reacted how I wanted. One thing I did change was the stabilization, depending on what I was drawing and how smooth of a line I wanted. I turned it up higher for the line art. One thing I am disappointed about for this piece is because I decided to have Farron's hood up, her main braids are hidden. I love her hair design, and braids are so much fun to draw. But I'll do plenty of pieces where they won't be covered, and I really like the vibe of having her hood up. Drawing the lantern was more fun than I expected. I ended up with what I think is a really cool design. For this illustration, I attempted the process of rendering from grayscale to color, which is not something I've done before. Maybe not the smartest choice for a new program, but being able to get the values down and add color on top made a huge difference in achieving the dramatic lighting I wanted for this piece. Although I don't think I will be trying again anytime soon, I wasn't able to very easily make it as colorful as I'd like. I definitely need to work on my values in art in general though, so this was good practice. I started by blocking in the main shadows with a very dark tone, and then added in a transitional gray in different areas, laying down lighter and lighter shades. It was very much a trust the process moment because she looks a little scary at this point. It is a cool process to kind of sculpt the character, building up the shadows and lights. The blending tool blended out a lot of the contrast, so I went back in and continued to add darker darks and lighter lights as I went. An interesting thing about drawing in black and white is the way colors have inherently different values on top of the form shading. I ended up pulling out the Isaro head because I was having a hard time visualizing exactly how the lantern light would hit her face, and it was very helpful. I never would have thought to have the shadow of the nose like this. I really enjoyed the process of rendering her hair, breaking it up into sections, which I added more detail to later. I would like to figure out how to add more texture to the hair in the future, but the fingertip blending tool gives a really cool effect I like. I don't really have much else to say about the rendering process, so you can watch it while I talk a little bit more about Farron. I'm still trying to figure out her backstory since the manga and game don't quite line up for Shad's backstory, but for now the idea is because Farron never did well academically, her father, as a researcher, always compared her to Shad. But on the flip side, he did praise her fighting prowess, but only to bring Shad down since he is not strong physically. Their father could never appreciate that they each had their own strengths and expected them both to be good at everything, basically. Shad left right before their father died, trying to continue his father's research in his own right and prove himself and his theories, so when their father died, Farron was left alone to try and figure out her place. That's the current lore at least, but that's always subject to change. With the grayscale shading done, I messed around with gradient maps a little, but it didn't really work. Maybe it would have, but I need to learn more about them before I can really incorporate them into my workflow. There are two ways I found to add color to the black and white shading, which look nearly identical. Make a new layer with the base colors either under the black and white shading with the shading layer set to brightness, or have the base colors above the shading and set the color layer to the color mode. After that, I added color variation to the base colors, including blush and hue shifts to the shadows, because it's quite dull and muddy on its own. The last thing for drawing Farron was adding the fire glow, which was a lot of fun. It can be a little confusing trying to figure out what the firelight will actually hit. Adding some softer glow with a big airbrush added a lot, and then I erased more of those areas that are in shadow, adding that needed contrast. This is one of the biggest illustrations I've made as far as complexity goes. I mean, it has a full background, and I rarely draw actual backgrounds. I usually leave it at like a colored square or something, but I had so much fun doing this one. Even if I stared at it for a solid 10 minutes trying to figure out how to even approach it. I really liked the vibe of Farron Woods and Twilight Princess when it's covered in twilight, with the purple fog and everything. The fog was a lot of fun to figure out how to draw. I will say one of the things that annoys me most in Clip Studio Paint is the fact that the transform tool is hidden under so many buttons. I don't use a keyboard or any kind of shortcut tool, so as a result I ended up using Liquify in place of transform a lot. I did later find it under the object tool as well though, so it's not that big of a deal. Anyways, I found this mysterious fog pattern in the material library which worked perfectly as the base. I treated the ground fog almost as if I was drawing water, drawing circular shape and then rounding the corners where they meet. Most of the background process was just me trying things out, and most of the time it worked out in the way I liked. Figuring out how I wanted to draw the Wii graphics was an interesting challenge, but I tried to layer the fog in a cool way and added color variation before using the airbrush to give it that actual foggy look. Part of the trick is using the airbrush to erase parts of what I drew, and that can give it a more organic fog shape as well as giving it a more transparent look. On another note, a few YouTubers who have inspired me as I try to figure out a digital art process are Love to Draw Manga, Gel Arts, and Carol.Lineart, to name a few. I also watched Ioop's, Devin L. Kurt's art, Emmy Hughes' art, and Winged Canvas's videos on Clip Studio Paint, and they were very helpful. All of these are amazing channels I highly recommend checking out. Even after using the program for a few months now, I've barely scratched the surface. I think my favorite part of drawing the background was the trees. I'm not sure what prompted me to use such a textured pencil brush for the bark, but I love the result. It was really satisfying to build up the different textures, and I will definitely be using this technique again in the future. A fun thing about this piece that was completely unintentional is the fact that in Twilight Princess, when the woods are covered in this poison purple fog, you actually have to use a lantern to get through it. I'd completely forgotten about that when I figured out what I wanted to do for this piece. I just chose the purple environment because purple is my favorite color, and I thought that the lantern lighting would be a lot of fun. And also, the purple, orange, green color scheme is a triad of secondary colors. Color theory for the win! The thing that doesn't quite make sense lore-wise is the fact that she would be wandering around in the Twilight environment, since everyone in the physical world is terrified at that point. Who knows, maybe she's special. I'll figure that out eventually. I probably could have put more effort into drawing the hawk, but I had been working on this piece for so long at this point, I think I just wanted it to be done. I did enjoy shading the feathers, but it was weird continuing to shade in grayscale with the rest of the illustration colored at this point. This might just be a random hawk, but Farron's hawk is trained to be an attack hawk as well as a messenger hawk, and it will distract enemies while she shoots them from farther off with her crossbow. I messed around with the contrast of the illustration overall, trying to figure out how to make Farron be the focal point and not draw too much attention to the background, while still showing all the details that I'm really proud of. One of the last details is the foreground fog, which adds so much to the atmosphere of this piece. While a challenge, it was so much fun to make the fog all swirly and transparent, and it added a sort of vignette to the composition. This year so far has had a lot going on for me, so I haven't posted much, but I am really hoping to share some more of my art with y'all, and I have a lot of exciting projects planned. Again, thank you all so much for 200 subscribers. I'm hosting a Draw This in Your Style challenge of Farron over on Instagram for over 300 followers, which will be posted soon, and you can join it here on YouTube as well. And tag me along with the hashtag you'll find on the original post. See you in my next video. Jesus loves you.